I made a video about 3 weeks ago showing you how to take a flash drive and create a Windows 10 installer disk. And that video in the last 3 weeks has shot up to almost 1 million views. So thank you for that. But with those million views came a lot of comments, over 4,000 of them. And I've literally gone through 4,000 comments trying to answer everyone individually. And I just decided it would make more sense to make one video to answer the most commonly asked questions. Hi guys, my name is Scott Merrill. I've been in IT for almost 35 years. And on this channel, I do Windows tips, tricks, troubleshooting, reviews, and much more. Additionally, one of the services that I offer is a free PC recommendation service. There's a link down in the description. If you're looking for a new computer but don't know where to go, feel free to click that link and fill out the form. It will send me an email and I can personally guide you to finding the right computer. And over the last couple weeks, over 500 of you have done that, and I have absolutely loved every second of it. Again, 100% free. I'm happy to help. That out of the way, let's get to the comments. The first comment is, can you save the download to an external drive? Actually, yes, you can. You can not only create this bootable installer with an external drive, meaning a flash drive or an external hard drive, but more importantly, you can actually save that ISO file to that drive, and then you can later create it anytime down the road, even after Windows 10 support ends. Now, one of the more popular comments I got is, will Windows 10 still work after October 14th? Now, I actually addressed that in the video, but it was at the very end, so a lot of you may not have even watched that far before you commented. But yes, after October 14th, Windows 10 support will end from Microsoft, but your computer will continue to run. You will continue to get Windows security updates and updates to your Windows Defender if that's what you use, but you will not get any more cumulative feature updates from Microsoft. Your support ends at that point. And the problem is that makes you vulnerable. Now, even if you are a low-risk user, that could still cause problems because hackers use tools to scan a range of IP addresses, and if they find a machine on that range of IP addresses that is unpatched, that could potentially represent a security threat for you. For most people, it's probably not a big deal, but you at least need to be aware that running an unpatched version of Windows can cause problems. Now, another question I've gotten tons of is about Windows 10 LTSC or IoT enterprise versions. Basically, what an LTSC version of Windows is, I believe it stands for long-term servicing channel. And these licenses, these machines that are running this version of Windows are designed for schools, corporations, hospitals, places where machines are bought in bulk. They have very specific licenses for those machines, as opposed to your Windows 10 Home or Pro that you would buy at the store. Those are basically what's called OEM licenses, meaning they are attached to that Dell or to that Toshiba or that Acer that you buy. LTSC licenses are for bulk usage. Now, it is true that you can run Windows 10 LTSC Enterprise, one of these versions on your computer, but what a lot of people are not telling you when they just say use that version is that it requires a very specific volume license key. So in other words, your Windows 10 license that you have on your computer right now will not work. It is a totally different version of Windows. So you're going to have to purchase a Windows 10 LTSC license. Now, if I understand, they're not terribly expensive, but the problem is finding one that's an actual legitimate license. If you are an LTSC license holder, you can legally sell your license, but a lot of times some of these companies who offer product keys, they buy these LTSC licenses in bulk, and sometimes they're not legitimate. And secondly, if you do the Windows 10 LTSC or enterprise versions like these people are commenting, the support for that will end in either 2027 or potentially up to 2032. And that's part of the reason why everybody is all excited about using this. But the downside is that there is no easy upgrade from your existing computer to this. It will require a full Windows reinstall. So you're going to have to back up all your files, all your apps, all your settings, all that stuff, wipe the machine clean, and then install Windows 10 Enterprise if you have that volume license key. But theoretically, yeah, you could. Next question is about zero patch. And I am admittedly not an expert on this, but I did do a little bit of research on it. And even though it appears to work for a lot of people, it is technically a hack. And of course, that would violate your Microsoft Terms of Service agreement that you have with your PC. Now, I know most of you are like, whatever, I don't care about Microsoft or their terms of service and whatever. That being said, at this time, I can't legitimately recommend a patching tool because not only does it violate Microsoft terms of service, but it's also a violation of YouTube's terms of service. So if you want to do it, I would definitely recommend that you do your homework and pay attention and make sure you follow instructions from trusted sources. Otherwise, I would probably stay away from it. Next question is, do you have a video showing you how to reinstall the operating system from this flash drive that you just made? I've got dozens of them. If you go through my video library, literally almost every third or fourth video shows you how to use a Windows installer disk, boot the computer to that disk, reinstall Windows, and get back up and running. Whether it's blue screen troubleshooting, your PC can't start, or you just need to wipe it, you got malware, whatever, just about every one of those videos is going to tell you to download an installer disk. So plenty of them in my library. Feel free to browse through it. Next question is I made a factory default USB when it was new in 2019. Is that the same as what you're talking about? No, it is not. What you have is a factory recovery disk from your manufacturer. So for example, if you have a Acer computer and it prompted you to create a recovery disk, it is basically the same thing, but what that recovery disk will do is it will reinstall all your apps, your programs, everything that came originally on your computer when you first opened it up and started using it, including all the bloatware and all of that. It's not going to help you do any kind of backups or anything like that. It's just going to simply restore everything to out-of-box condition. The difference between what you have and what I'm talking about is that disk is simply to wipe the hard drive and start over. Doesn't allow you to get into the computer and back up your files. It doesn't allow you to do any troubleshooting. It just simply wipes the computer and puts it back to factory. Now, depending on how your backups are or whether you even need backups, that may be a solution for you. But if you went and uninstalled anything after you got your computer brand new, you're going to have to do all of that over again. And same as with the Windows 10 installer, you're going to have to do all the Windows updates again because it's, again, if it's from 2019, that's at least 5 years worth of Windows updates. Either way, both disks will work, but they do two different things. The next question is I didn't hear anything about what file format that 8 GB flash drive needs to be, and also does it actually need to be 8 GB? Well, the file format doesn't matter because when you use the media creation tool, it is going to format that drive anyway. So you don't need to format it first because the program's just going to do it again anyway. I believe it formats it in the standard NTFS partition, and I'm honestly not sure. I haven't looked in a while. I don't think it takes up the entire 8 gigs. I'm pretty sure it takes up more than 4 and probably over 5 because there's another question that I haven't addressed yet. Another question is, my laptop is running fine with Windows 10 and I don't use all the features, but I'd like to install Windows 11, but apparently my computer doesn't have the memory to run it, according to Microsoft when I ran their test. And he's referring to that PC Health Check app that is in your Windows update that tells you whether or not your computer is supported. He goes, so I'm stuck with Windows 10. You say my computer will be vulnerable with no more support, which is true. My question is I have antivirus software installed as well as a VPN. Will this not protect me? That is a great question because, again, what I had said earlier is that hackers, the way that they find vulnerable computers is they can scan a range of public-facing IP addresses and scan inside that network and see if there's any machines that aren't patched. Now, the reality is, for most people, it's probably not a concern. If you've got a good quality antivirus like ESET, for example, and you use a VPN, now you are essentially hiding your IP address from your normal location. But that doesn't, if your IP address is now in Romania because you're on a VPN, that's great unless somebody is scanning for Romanian IP addresses. So having that VPN doesn't really hide you, so to speak. And again, most people are probably fine, but just be aware that if there's a zero-day virus or a ransomware attack and your computer is vulnerable, it could be an issue. The next comment is, why did you specifically lie about them ending Windows 10 support? No, well, actually I didn't. You just didn't watch the whole video. Because at the end of the last video, I did a question and answer session, and my very first question was, will Windows 10 continue to work? Absolutely it will. It's just going to be vulnerable. And then they say, well, they're only ending support for Home and Pro, which is the vast majority of people. He goes, not IoT or LTSC, and you can pay extra for support up to 3 years. Again, refer back to my LTSC question that it requires a volume license key, and it's completely different than Home and Pro. Not to mention, something I didn't mention earlier, is that the Windows 10 LTSC, you are going to be stuck at Windows 21 H2. It's never going to get any more. You may get security updates and feature updates and things like that, but it is never going to go above Windows 21 H2. Now, Windows 11 Enterprise LTSC will go to 24 H2, I believe. But if you want to stay on Windows 10, you are stuck on that major update. Because again, the enterprise editions aren't designed to provide features. They're designed for corporate environments that just need a stable operating system. So if you go that route, you will have longer support and more security updates. But honestly, Microsoft is going to continue to provide security updates for your Windows Defender, and they're just not going to provide any more feature updates. So for a lot of people, that just means no more blue screens. Either way, the choice is yours, but you just need to know the facts. Next question is, can I use the flash drive right out of the package? Yeah, absolutely. As I said before, when you pop that in, the media creation tool is going to format that drive. So you don't have to do anything else to it other than plug it in and have Windows recognize that drive letter. The media creation tool is going to do everything. Now, here's a really good question, and I got a lot of people asking this one, is what's going to happen with their Windows 10 licenses if they have to reinstall, say, 2 or 3 years down the road? Wonderful question, perfectly understandable. When you install Windows 10 and activate it, that license key is now stored on your motherboard, on your laptop or desktop. It's stored in the BIOS. It's a digital key. Now, a lot of you may be used to the little stickers that used to come on the PC. Well, they don't do that anymore. Everything's digital. So if you have a Windows 10 machine that you have connected to Microsoft, downloaded updates, activated all that, you can wipe that computer clean, reinstall Windows. It's going to read that key automatically from that BIOS. It's going to automatically reactivate you. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to purchase any more keys. You're good to go. And this probably will not come as a shock to any of you, but a huge number of people commented with the word Linux. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Linux is bad. I never will. For a lot of people, it really works well. But here's the problem, is that a lot of Linux users will go in the comments and just say, you guys are a bunch of idiots. Why aren't you using Linux? For your average everyday user who only does, social media, email, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, and doesn't really do anything, doesn't have any Windows specific programs that they need, yeah, Linux is a great alternative. It's free. It's going to continually update forever. It's not going to crash on you. And especially if you're not a gamer, Linux is perfect. And I absolutely encourage you to try it. I've made a video about checking out Linux before. That being said, from my mindset, for example, I couldn't do that. I have thousands of dollars worth of Windows only software that may or may not run in a Linux environment. Now, there is things in Linux, like I believe it's called Wine, that are basically emulators that they let you run Windows applications inside Linux, and a lot of them work. But some of the software that I use doesn't work with Wine, so I can't just switch over to Linux. And a lot of you, for example, use Adobe Creative Cloud. Also doesn't work in Linux. Some of you are heavy gamers, and if you know anything about Linux and gaming, even though it's gotten better, a lot of people say don't use Linux as a gaming machine. Now, I'm sure that will change over time and it will be improved and things like that, support for different graphics cards, but right now, Windows is really the dominant force when it comes to heavy gaming. So what I would tell you is that don't run away from Linux, just do your homework and find out if it's going to work for you. If you are a little 70-year-old lady in Phoenix, Arizona, and you have no problem trying it out because you really don't do a whole lot of stuff, go for it. But a lot of you have been using Windows for so long, you know how to do everything in Windows for what you need, and you don't want to learn anything else. In that case, Linux really may not be the solution for you. Either way, like I said, ask the right questions, do your research, and then if you want to try it and you have nothing to lose, go for it. And since we're on the subject of Linux, this is something I see a lot of, and it's not people going, hey, Linux might be a really good alternative for you. You should try it out. It's very condescending comments like this one. If you're still using Windows 10, do this now. Switch to Linux. If you weren't intelligent enough to do that prior to this, then you're probably too stupid to do it now. I'm not sure I would want to be involved in a community that talks to the people like that, especially when they want you to use the software, but then as soon as you start asking questions, they talk down to you. Maybe that's why I stayed with Windows. I don't know. Now, to be fair, not every Linux user is like this, but the Linux people that are really adamant about that, like, for example, going on a Windows channel and telling everybody to use Linux, sometimes these people can be very toxic, and you should just be mindful of that. I personally get offended by it because my people read these comments and then they say, yeah, well, sure, I'll try it. And then when they need help, it's like, you're on your own, buddy. I don't like that. Great question here. What about all the computers that can't run Windows 11 due to the TPM 2.0 requirement? Well, the good news is for you is that if you've got a relatively new machine and it runs just fine in Windows 10, you can upgrade to Windows 11. I'm going to make a dedicated video showing you exactly how to do that using a whole different tool, and it might save you from having to go and upgrade and spend money on a machine that already has Windows 11 when your existing computer can probably run it just fine, even without the TPM requirements or anything like that. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that. Stay tuned so you get notified when that video comes out, because that's going to save a lot of you a lot of money. Another great question here. I did this 3 years ago when I got my machines home for the first time. Should I make new disks? Maybe. The version of Windows that is currently available for download right now is 21H2. 3 years ago, you probably had a much older version. So if you use the ones that you have now, you're going to be having a lot of cumulative updates, you know, from where you were at all the way up to 21H2, and that could take you a whole day just to download those updates. So what I would say is keep the old ones, but make a new one just to be safe, and that way you have a couple and you can just choose whichever one you want to use. But I would probably go ahead and update the disk. So here's one of my favorites. I need a USB drive with a Windows 10 label on it. Cool. Can you stop the clickbait crap and just say what it's about? No, because that's exactly what I did in the video. I told you what you need. I told you why you needed it. Unfortunately, if you didn't watch the video more than 27 seconds, I can't help you. While we're on the subject, maybe you should look up the definition of clickbait.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Now here's one I've seen a lot too, regarding the Windows 10 ISO creation tool, because it does give you the option to do it to either a flash drive or, if you need to, a DVD. Now the problem is the files will not fit on a normal DVD. You will have to use what's known as a DVD dual layer, DVD-DL, because that gives you up to 9.4 gigabytes of storage. A regular DVD is only 4.7 gigs, and that's not going to be enough for the installer. And I really wish Microsoft would have done a better job of clarifying that, but just be aware, if you want to use a DVD, you have to go spend more money and buy the specific dual layer discs in order to create it. But if you have those, yes, you can absolutely do it with a dual layer disc. Another one of my favorite questions, super great question. I created the installer disk using your steps, no problem. Awesome. If I have a second laptop running Windows 10, will the same disk work to install it if I ever need to? And I probably should have clarified that in the beginning, and a lot of times when I'm making a video, I don't think about all the potential questions until the very end. But perfect question. No, you only need one installer per operating system. So say, for example, you have 2 Windows 10 computers and 1 Windows 11 computer. You need one Windows 10 installer that will cover both of those Windows 10 computers, and I would recommend creating one installer disk specifically for that Windows 11 machine. But you could have 12 Windows 10 computers in the house, and you only need one disk. Thanks so much for that question. Another great question here. Can I use that same USB thumb drive to also house installation files for apps that I would want to reinstall if I had to reinstall Windows? Yes, you can, but you can't do it before you create the installer disk. The reason is because that flash drive gets wiped during the process. But once the Windows installer is created and now you have a bootable flash drive, you can put any installer files on top of it on that disk, no problem, because at that point it's just a storage drive. But it just happens to be a bootable storage drive that can help you reinstall Windows. Just make sure to do it after creating the disk, not before. If you put them on there before you create it, it's going to get wiped. Boy, you guys had some great questions here. Many thanks. Just subscribe. Awesome, thanks. Is there any advantage to burning an ISO disk rather than using a USB stick? Yes. Part of the reason you would want to do this on a DVD is because a DVD drive is going to last a lot longer because of just the storage medium and how it's designed and how it works and how it stores media. Flash drives are known to be little flaky and intermittent, and it could work one day and die the next. If you have the ISO just burned to a DVD, you can take that ISO file and create a Windows installer anytime you want down the road. If you have the installer on a DVD disc, you have something you can just pop in the computer, boot to that DVD, and you're off and running. So yes, for long-term storage, the DVD does make more sense. But unfortunately, DVD drives are becoming kind of rare and people don't really have them anymore. So it's kind of, flash drives kind of become the norm. Now here's a question regarding the ESU, the Extended Service Plan through Microsoft that I touched on in the video, but a lot of details weren't out at that point. It does cost you $30 a year per PC to continue to get Windows feature updates. Okay. And again, you're going to get your security updates regardless, but I'm talking about feature updates and cumulative releases. Okay. It's $30 for the first year, but it's supposed to double every year after that. So $30 for the first year, $60 for the second year, and $120 for the third year per computer. So at that point, you have to really kind of decide, does it make sense to continue paying for support, or should you go with installing Windows 11 on your machine and continue to get updates, or potentially just get a new computer? Another great question. Will the Windows 10 download include all the updates up to the point you download, or is it likely a freshly bought version from when it first came out? Microsoft has said that the last version that will be available on the website to download is going to be version 21H2. That's the last supported version of Windows 10. Now, there may be some smaller updates in the background and things like that, drivers, security updates, and all that, but 21H2 will be the last cumulative or mega release that Microsoft will provide. So if you think waiting until the last day to get the latest updates, I wouldn't do it. Go ahead and do it now. It's really not going to be much different. Maybe a few downloads, a few patches, but really 21H2 is it. Next question. I'm not a Windows 11 hater, but none of my computers can run Windows 11 due to the TPM requirements. Strange he didn't mention that. Well, that's true. I didn't mention it because it wasn't the context of the video. I do plan on making, as I said before, a video showing you how to upgrade your computer to Windows 11 if you so choose. And again, if you haven't subscribed, do that, get notified, so when that video comes out, you'll be able to go ahead and upgrade your system to Windows 11 for free. Next question. Not all machines will run Windows 11, right? It depends. I mean, if your machine is 15 years old and it runs like a dog on Windows 10, it's not going to suddenly run better with Windows 11. This Windows 11 TPM bypass thing that I'm going to be making a video about is for those people, and there's a ton of them out there who have a perfectly, beautifully, super fast running Windows 10 machine. And for some reason, Microsoft's requirements say it doesn't qualify for a Windows 11 upgrade. These are people who absolutely love their computer. It's plenty fast, but unfortunately, they're going to be out of support. That's really who this is designed for. If you have a 7, 8, 10-year-old computer that's just kind of gotten slow, it might be better to consider go ahead and getting that upgrade. And again, there's a link down in the description. You can click that link and send me that form and let me help guide you. Next question, can I use an external hard drive instead of a flash drive? And actually, there's one other thing I want to touch on this. Yes, you can. So for example, this external hard drive, this can be a bootable drive. Absolutely. But the problem is that when you create this disk, you only need about 8 gigs of space. And most of these drives are generally, 200 gig, 500 gig. That's a ton of wasted space for one installer disk. But theoretically, yes, you can. But what you need to be aware of is anything that's on that drive is going to be wiped during the process. Windows warns you when you start creating this process, and I warned you during the tutorial, anything on that drive will be wiped. So you better make sure you have it backed up safely. Now, one other question that I surprisingly didn't think I would hear is people were asking, what about SD cards? Like the SD cards for your camera, can those be used? While I'm not 100,000% sure, I'm pretty sure SD cards are not PC bootable, because I don't think I've ever seen one in the BIOS when it shows the list of drives in the BIOS for Windows to boot to. Never seen that. It may be possible, but the reality is probably not. Next question. I've heard Windows 11 is no good. Well, That's subjective. It depends on what your needs are. Honestly, I upgraded my computer from Windows 10, which I loved, to Windows 11, and I kind of hated it. And I've gotten kind of used to it, and it's okay. I've learned to not hate it so much. But I did actually make a video, a whole Windows 11 walkthrough, so you know exactly what to expect from every aspect of the operating system and all the different features and all that. I'll put that link up here if you want to click on it and check it out. And then if you choose to stay with Windows 10, now you can say, well, I've seen Windows 11 and okay, I think it sucks and I'm just going to stay with Windows 10. Or you go, hey, it looks pretty cool. My computer's eligible for the upgrade. Boom, upgrade, you're good to go. Thanks for the info. What about cumulative updates? Will the ISO file include them? Okay, so I already touched on this before. You're only going to get Windows 21 H2 with the current Windows 10 download. Now, another question I have gotten, and I think they touch on this here, is can you download those updates separately? I'm not sure if you can download those collectively, meaning a whole group of Windows updates. I know you can download specific updates, but you have to get online and you have to know the update number and all that. So I would say probably no, but if I'm wrong, please let me know down in the comments because I sure would like to know that. Now here's a very common question regarding Windows 10 support being over. About whether the Windows security software, specifically Defender, and I have researched this and Microsoft has publicly stated that will not stop. So in other words, if you have Windows 10, you are not going to get feature updates. You might get a few patches, driver updates, things like that, but your Windows Defender will continue to receive monthly, weekly, however often the updates come. That will not stop. So I just want to be very clear on that. I made sure of that before I commented. Windows 10 Defender will continue to work after October 14th. Another great question, and one I actually didn't know. I had to figure it out a little while ago. After support ends for Windows 10, will they stop the free Windows 10 to Windows 11 upgrade? Because they have a Windows 10 license which came with their computer. I actually researched this, and even though there is no stated end of upgrade date yet, meaning it should go on for at least another year or more, Microsoft at any time can say, boom, we're done, no more free upgrades. Now, for those of you who had a Windows 7 computer and you were able to get that free Windows 10 upgrade, and a lot of you got it overnight and didn't even know it, that will end at some point. So just be aware that if you have looked into Windows 11 and you are interested and you want to go ahead and upgrade to Windows 11, I would go ahead and do that, and also maybe create a Windows 11 installer, because now down the road, even if you roll back to Windows 10 and then at some point you decide to go to Windows 11 again, you'll have the installer that you need, and the licenses for 10 will work on 11 and 11 will work on 10. So you're 100% good there. If you download the ISO and place it on a hard drive, then you can make as many copies as you want. That is absolutely correct. And in the video, I walk you through the installer part, in other words, creating the flash drive. But there is an option in there to just download the ISO file. Now, the question you might ask, what is an ISO file? Well, I'm going to use my Office CD here as an example. Pretend that this is a Windows 10 installer disk, okay? The ISO is a snapshot of everything contained on this disk. So say, for example, there's 8,000 files on here. The ISO file is an image of that. And there are free tools out there, which I will talk about in the Windows 11 bypass video. There's tools out there that can take that ISO file and extract everything on it so it looks on that disk just like this. So basically all it is if you're familiar with a zip file, it's kind of the same thing. Not exactly, but it's close. Long story short, the ISO file has everything you need to install Windows once those files have been put onto a disk or extracted. And yes, that's true. If you have that ISO file, then yeah, 2, 3, 6, 12 years down the road, you can create an installer disk using that ISO file, and boom, you're back up and running. Now here's a comment that I got a lot of regarding the safe places to download the Windows 10 installer. Now, of course, I'm going to recommend always to go to Microsoft and download from Microsoft, because that is a trusted source. But there are other websites out there, public repositories, that take these ISO files and store them on a server that you can safely download. I didn't mention that in the first video because one, some of these websites are shady and some are legit. I'll cover that in an entirely different video. But the most important thing is that if you have the ability to go ahead and create the installer disk from a trusted source that everybody knows, go ahead and do it now. Later down the road, if you need a Windows 10 installer and it's no longer available, then you can refer to that video where I show you safe places to download the installer disk. But for now, stick with the Microsoft because it's safer. Say you make 2 USB drives and one of them goes bad. Can you make another copy using your known good USB drive years down the road? You can do it several ways. If you have the original ISO file, say, stored on your computer, yes, you can absolutely do that. There are free tools out there that let you create an installer disk, and all you have to do is point it to that ISO file and it will just create another disk. Now, the media creation part that Microsoft provides is probably not going to work because at some point it's going to stop looking to the Microsoft server to download that ISO file to create that disk. So it probably would make sense to just go ahead and download that ISO file and maybe create one disk. That way you're covered either way. Now, another option is you could clone that flash drive if you wanted. If you don't have the ISO file, just have the installer disk, you could create a duplicate of that and it will just basically be an exact duplicate of that flash drive. So there's multiple ways to do it. My best recommendation is to have the ISO file on your computer and a flash drive. You're good to go either way, no matter what happens. Next comment. It's not that hard to find installation media for just about any version of Windows for free. Yes, that is true, but some of the locations that people recommend you go download this stuff are shady and sometimes potentially infected with malware. I generally try to point you in safe locations to download safe, clean files, but we'll cover that in another video later because the most important thing is to know if you need the software, where can you safely download it? Great question here. So in the future, if I need to reinstall Windows 7, will I still need my old Windows 7 installer as Windows 10 was updated from Windows 7? The good news is if you had Windows 7 and you got the free upgrade to Windows 10, your license transferred over to Windows 10. In other words, that sticker that was on your computer was converted into a digital license. That license is stored in your BIOS on your motherboard. So if you had to reinstall Windows a year down the road, you don't need that Windows 7 disk because your system is now licensed for Windows 10. So you could use the installer disk I showed you how to create, reinstall Windows. The activation is going to be completely digital. You don't need Windows 7 anymore. But if you still have the software, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to hold on to it just to be sure, because maybe someday down the road you may have another computer that you want to put Windows 7 on. I'm going to wait until the last day in October to get the full update since I do have others. I just want it for updating. Well, again, 21H2 is going to be the last version. So whether you do it in June or you wait until October, you're still going to have the same version when you download and create that installer disk. So go ahead and do it now, get it out the way, because you're going to blink and it's going to be November and then you're going to be like, oops. Or you can be like me and just become your own Microsoft tech. Give yourself a new digital license, write in the command prompt, ignore this guy, and don't panic. Merely Google how to do it yourself. Well, okay, go for it. And my favorite comment of all, you have no idea what you're talking about.